We are all faced with great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And that was exactly what it was. Being reminded of that, being taught that that's what it was, isn't something that your doctor's going to give you. 2019, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. It was an anaplastic astrocytoma grade 3. I found that it was a lot better than a grade 4 because they give you much less time to live. I began with a surgery where they were able to remove 90%. They wanted to do it right away, so there really was no thought process there. It was like, we need to get you under. And then I guess the realization occurred right afterwards when they were recommending chemo and radiation as soon as I could. And then understanding that there was no cure was a huge shock of mine. Cancer is not in my family at all, so this was, the first big thing. And it was confusing because I was constantly exercising, being healthy, staying fit. I had just finished my MBA the year before, and somehow they had to remove most of that. Because of its location, it was my left temporal lobe. I was actually awake for most of the surgery, where they were asking me questions to make sure they didn't remove all of my memory, just as much as they could. They were able to take out 90%, and then to follow was the chemo and radiation. I have to say, I was already against the chemo and radiation. Not that I knew much about it, but I knew that it wasn't going to be good. So I took my time to research and figure out what I could do. But it wasn't until I was introduced to a friend who had the same oncologist as me. She was my age, and she had the same tumor, and she was already almost 5 years in at that point. So it was great to be able to talk to one another and release our stress and just feel like you're not alone, because automatically when you're diagnosed, nobody around you can relate to you. Everyone's just like, it's okay, like you're gonna be fine, and there's nothing else that we can do, but just enjoy your life. And shortly after that, her tumor came back, and this is what pushed her into Dr. Joe. She had gone to her very first Dr. Joe event, and she somehow started to dissolve her tumor after her first visit, which was huge. Even our oncologist was like, what's going on? How did you do this? Her chemo wasn't working. They had just stopped giving her the chemo. It was still growing with the chemo. So she was like, okay, we're gonna give you a quick break, and then we're gonna do something else. And once her tumor started to dissolve, she decided that she was going to heal herself. And that was huge, because then 6 months later, her tumor was gone. And I was like, already practicing my meditation. I hadn't been to Dr. Joe yet, but I knew that that was my solution. That was my next step. And I knew it was going to be many steps. And this is now my 4th Dr. Joe event, but last year around this time, December, I was coming with urgency because I had an MRI a couple months before stating that my tumor seemed to be coming back. And I knew exactly why. I was filled with stress. I was planning a wedding. I was putting aside my meditation and focusing on myself, or, actually everyone around me, more so than myself, making sure everyone was happy, making sure everything we wanted was there. I didn't have time to meditate as much as I used to. So it was a lot, but I wasn't surprised. So they wanted to go in and, take a piece out to examine it and see exactly what type of tumor it was. Maybe it had increased to a grade 4, they didn't know. And I was like, actually, I'm gonna go to Dr. Joe again. And I'm going to just focus on meditation. I'll let you know when I'm ready. And they're like, no, you need to come back as soon as you can. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I know that you won't have any good news for me. So I went to Dr. Joe a couple months later, scheduled my MRI after, and the tumor had shrunk back to normal. That was huge. It brought tears to my eyes, but I knew that it was going to happen. I knew that that's exactly what I needed. And sure enough, my oncologist, who had already known from my friend that this is possible, was like, okay, all right, then we're good. We'll wait another 6 months before we test you again. So since then, I've continued my meditation, and here I am now. I feel like every time I come, I'm learning something new. I'm digesting it better, and I've noticed in my day-to-day that I need to meditate in the morning, and then I need to meditate again at night. I need to wake up and remind myself of who I am and who I want to be. And I need to end my day with that same process. And I think it's made a huge difference. There was something that really hit me hard, and that was when the focus was on love, loving yourself, finding love for yourself. It was as if that was something I never thought of before. It's always been to love the ones around you, please the ones around you, but realizing that loving yourself is all that you need was huge to me, because I never thought of that. So that became a big priority, understanding who I was, and accepting that maybe I didn't know if I had a calling before, but I have one now. That was absolutely huge. And then there was one statement that he made that really sat with me, and I wrote it down because I wouldn't want to mess it up. So it's actually very important, and it's when he says, we are all faced with great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And that was exactly what it was. That's exactly what being diagnosed with cancer and illness, or it's a wake-up call. And that's exactly what it was. And being reminded of that, being taught that that's what it was, isn't something that your doctor's going to give you. Finding myself, that was a huge piece of the puzzle.